Okay, so we're in 314, Rekevo 314, and I'm gonna
flip it around.
from here. Everyone have the PDF? Okay. Rabbi Dosa ben Hirkanus Omer. Shena shel shacharit ve'yayin shel tzohoraim ve'sichat hayeladim v'yeshivat batei knesiot shel amei haaretz motz'in et ha'adam min ha'olam. Rabbi Dosa like to say morning sleep, midday.
I'm sorry, what page are you on, Rabbi? I apologize.
41, chapter 3:14.
Why can't I rotate? Oh, there's the rotate. Right.
Neither can I.
I got it now. Up on top, there's a little arrow there. Shows you to rotate.
Or you can go on Safari and find it. So he says something. Rabbi Dosa, son of Hirkanus, like to say morning sleep, meaning sleeping in, drinking in the middle of the day, midday wine, the babbling of youths, and the frequently the meeting places of the unlettered. So Amei Haaretz, like the kind of salt of the earth people, what they mean is just uneducated people. All of these things remove a person from the world. Okay. So we see here that basically what they're saying is these things they're negative things. We don't like these things, according to Rabbi. Rabbi Dosa does not like these things. Let's see, what is this? Motz'in et ha'adam min ha'olam. Remove the person from the world.
Chicken legs today.
Okay, so the various behavior. Would someone like to read?
Oh, we see it.
It's chapter 3, verse what on Safari? If I'm looking at Safari.
Well, it's I don't know what it is on Safari, but I put the PDF in the chat.
Okay.
Click on that. We can all be on the same page, literally. All right. So, who wants? Would anyone like to? Maybe you know what? I'll read. It's fine. Read everyone. Okay. The various behaviors enumerated here by Dosa ben Hirkanus all limit one's exposure to the study and discussion of Torah. The consequence about which we are here warned, however, is not impoverished devotional or intellectual life, but rather ultimate isolation from the fellowship of human beings, which is what gives life its true meaning. This is exactly the meaning of the expression Motz'in et ha'adam min ha'olam, as we have already seen in chapter 2:16. Here we find a kind of irony in the teaching. Certainly 3 of the 4 things about which Dosa ben Hirkanus cautions us, drinking during the workday, chatting with children, and whiling away one's time in the haunts of the unlettered, would seem to promote our involvement in the human community. Morning slumber, if it is the result of the late night revelry with the masses, may also fit the pattern. And yet we are taught here that the only real blueprints to create meaningful and enduring community are the teachings of Torah that these apparently social behaviors keep us from. Neglecting Torah study for the sake of bonding with others cannot work, we are told. It will create a false, superficial. The only way to keep oneself in the world is through the diligent apprenticeship of Torah, which will require patience and delayed gratification, to be sure, but which will also guide us to the kinds of human relationships that constitute a world worthy of its name. This is the second appearance in Avot of the term Amei Haaretz, translated here as the unlettered, where the same term in 2:6 is translated as ignoramus. The phrase has undergone a noticeable change from its earlier biblical usage, when it meant something like the governing assembly or town council and was clearly a term of authority and respect. For example, you could see Genesis 23:7 and Leviticus 24. In rabbinic times, it apparently was taken somewhat more literally as people of the land, that is, those who work the land, thus a sneering reference to Hapoali, to the vulgar masses unschooled to the intricacies of Torah-based scholarship. What can only be a prejudice and thus a distrust, which was no doubt entirely mutual, developed between the rabbinical leadership and the Amei Haaretz. The latter were assumed not to be concerned with certain ritual laws, especially concerning tithes and purity restrictions. And they were therefore treated with disdainful hostility when the sacred was at stake. Mostly, they were considered by the rabbis to be ignorant of, perhaps even antagonistic to, the Torah itself, an assumption that may have been quite unwarranted. At other times, they were considered to be more generally ignorant. In any event, the term survives to this day as a very pejorative moniker for someone who is completely unversed in Torah, Jewish practice, and Jewish concepts. It is decidedly not recommended as part of a polite and tolerant vocabulary. All right, so I'm going to unmute everyone. Okay, so a couple interesting things here that I find, relevant for what we are all going through. These are things that take us, remove a person from the world. Rabbi Tucker takes it literally. These are things that, what is the world? The world is human interaction and relationship. And these are three things take us away from human significant or meaningful human interaction, meaning interaction that surrounds itself in Torah. Like this is the basis of life is living a life guided by Torah. And if you're not, then you're taking yourself out of that world. Then you're not really interacting with people. It's an interesting concept. Then he goes on to talk about what is, the Am Haaretz, what it means, and so on and so forth. Any reflections? Any questions out of you? Nope.
So it's interesting to think of the Am Haaretz as insult. Because in previous times when I've studied it, so it hasn't been looked at as an insult.
Where you mean?
Like when I look at it in like Peah and in Demai when it's spoken about, it was more of just a category of someone who like doesn't know as much, more of like thinking more in terms of like the one who doesn't know a child. Is how
Yeah, but I think that is an insult. I mean, I think it is. It's a derogatory remark in any case. I think.
Yeah.
I've only heard it used in a derogatory manner.
So Jackie, that is their kind of saying that the uneducated people. That is to them. I think.
Well, that's because in like Peah and Demai, there's so, especially in Demai, there was so many opportunities for like the Am Haaretz to be included that I didn't look at it as an insult. So it's just interesting.
Well,
to see it, but I didn't know. Is that what I'm doing?
Definitely in the Torah, as I mentioned, it's not an insult. But and it could just be this is how they're classified. And they're just saying the uneducated people. We have different terms for it. Some people say, salt of the earth people. That's like a nice way of saying it, right? So so is it an insult? I guess that it's a subjective term, but it certainly doesn't have the implications. It doesn't have the positive influence that the Torah has, or meaning the 5 books. So, all right. So let's read Rabbi Tamar Elad Applebaum. She says, Rabbi Dosa ben Hyrcanus immediately follows the teaching of Hanina ben Dosa in the previous Mishnah, which with this teaching from a different perspective, that the human spirit can also lead one astray. from that which is pure and uplifting to that which is impure, with the power to contaminate the soul. Do not seek the recognition of others by force or by chit chat or by idleness. Rabbi Dosa says, for these can remove a person from the world. That is to say, they can impede one from being a needed, beneficial presence in the world. Devote yourself to bettering other people's lives. The rabbi admonishes us, and do so publicly and privately. Dedicate yourself to the work of connections, of truly seeing others who approach you from any corner of life, hearing their voices, praying on their behalf, and giving fully of yourself. Doing these things will fill your life with cause and meaning. Doing them will fill your life with life. So again, I'm talking about what is a meaningful interaction we're talking about here. And there's things we have to think about during these times, right? What are we feeling? How are we interacting with people? What are we talking about? What are we doing?
It sort of reminds me, remember a few months ago, we studied a pasuk that said not to talk with women.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of tied into that similar concept.
Don't make small talk with your wife was the, right, exactly. Yeah. And Rabbi Applebaum, she gave a great commentary basically saying, there are some things that are just a little bit dated, and that's one of them.
And it's interesting. We can easily all be removing ourselves from the world during this time and just not socializing. And I think it's so important, like, that we're making these phone calls to those who are homebound that can't really interact and maybe don't have as much tech access to Zoom, that we all participate in playing that role so that we're not actively removing anyone just from their lack of knowledge.
Yeah. And I'll share that.
Or their lack of ability.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Last night we had our first Zoom class, and I think we had like 18 people or something like that. And I asked people, why are you here at the beginning? I recorded the last 20 minutes, but it didn't record at the beginning. And for like half the people, they were like, I need to have meaningful interactions with people. Yeah. They just like were craving, something a little more serious as far as like learning, but also just like real interaction. That they had gone days and days without it, and so it reminds me of this Mishnah. All right, so we'll go to 3:15. Rabbi Elazar of Modi'in liked to say, Omer hamechalel et kodoshim v'hamevazeh et hamoadot v'hamalbin v'rabim v'hamefer brito shel Avraham Avinu v'hamegale panim v'torah shelo kehalacha afal pi sheyesh biyado Torah u'masim tovim ein lo chelek le'olam haba. Rabbi Elazar and Modin like to say these have no portion in the world to come, even if they both have Torah and good deeds to their name. Those who profane sacrificial meats, those who scorn the festivals, those who cause others to blanch in public, those who annul the covenant of our father Abraham, and those who interpret facets of Torah contrary to the halakha. So he's saying you can have Torah and good deeds to your name, you be a good person, but if you do these things, there's no place for you in the world to come. So Rabbi Elazar of, I'm just gonna everyone. Okay. Rabbi Elazar of Modi'in. Elazar Modi'in was one of the premier expounders of scripture in the generation following the destruction of the temple. So respected was he by his colleagues that when something cried out for a clever interpretation, the sages would often say, we sure could use that fellow from Modi'in. So that's like who he was. They have no portion of the world to come. This Mishnah is kind of a companion to one found in Sanhedrin 10:1, which also lists several categories of people who, though of the people of Israel, have forfeited their promised share in the world to come. There's no overlap between the two lists. And in fact, they seem to have very different purposes. The Mishnah in Sanhedrin apparently defines what normative Jewish beliefs are taken to be. Those that deviate from those beliefs, for example, the resurrection of the Messianic era is promised by the Torah, even though they might be defensible on some reading of the tradition, are declared to be heterodox, and thus, in what was no doubt a rhetorically exaggerated assertion, those who hold them are said to be deserving of the ultimate punishment. Our present Mishnah seems to be making a very different point. However, though it does so by means of the same overinflated sanction of forfeiting one's portion in the world to come. Elazar of Modi'in teaches us that even mastery of Torah and living a generally good life are still insufficient to countervail some fundamental infractions. Violating certain sancta, displaying gross insensitivity to human feelings, and interpreting or quoting Torah in a way that exposes it in an unflattering way will nullify all the merit one may have accrued, even over the course of a lifetime of fealty to the commandments. The items listed in this Mishnah do not constitute matters of doctrinal interpretation, as do those in Tractate Sanhedrin, but rather issues of respect for the tradition and for the human hearts. You see here that there are kind of like different lists, and Sanhedrin 10.1 is the more kind of authoritative list. But let's interpret on our own. Why do you think Rabbi Elazar mentions these things? There's plenty of things he could have mentioned. Why these things? Anyone want to take a stab at it? All right. Okay. Okay. The next one is something the next one's very interesting. Those who blanch others in public. This is something that is quite relevant to our days today, because the question is, what does in public mean? Is a totally different thing than the rabbis would have imagined. Meaning today is something that they would not have imagined, in a sense that, a tweet is something in public, right? Tagging someone, calling them out, putting something on social media. Actually, I could be outside right now. There could be people outside who scream something outside about someone, and only a couple of people hear it. Depending on how many followers you have, when you put something out there, it magnifies, right? And it's there forever until you delete it. Those who come up to blanch others in public. The Hebrew malvin literally means to turn white. And causing the blood to drain from another's face is an oft-used expression for causing someone public humiliation. Elsewhere, the sin of public shaming is compared in a clever way to homicide. It's the expression shedding of blood. And that assumption is that shame causes the person's face to turn white, precisely because blood has been made to flow out of the face. You can see it. The comparison to
You're fading in and out. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're turning away from the microphone, but I'm having a hard time picking up.
So is it better now?
Better.
Okay.
Better.
So they talked about turning someone's face white. This is like they consider this homicide, and there's a discussion, very famous discussion about Messiah 50 deep. The comparison to homicide is apt as well because unlike theft of property where restitution can be made for the crime, there's no real way to undo the harm done by public embarrassment. Just as it is impossible to undo killing. It is noteworthy that English also preserves this idea of the connection between humiliation and murder. The idiom character assassination. Also noteworthy and sadly true is the text assumption that one can be a student of Torah and a faithful observer of the commandments, yet still fail this prime test of sensitivity to the humiliation of others. In this regard, see the following comment. And those who interpret facets of Torah contrary to halakha. This phrase is difficult to translate both accurately and elegantly. The last two words, Shelo kahalacha appear only a handful of times in rabbinic literature. Literally, this phrase speaks of one who exposes an aspect of the Torah that is contrary to the halakha, and the expression clearly is intended to convey a sense of brazenness and disrespect for tradition. Torah, like any other text in human language, can be interpreted tendentiously or taken out of context and thus portrayed unfairly in negative light. Noteworthy again is a supposition that this fatal infraction can sometimes be found in a person who is immersed in Torah and is even strictly observant of the mitzvot. An analogy we all recognize and learn to excuse and even perhaps embrace the shortcomings and flaws of those we love and are devoted to. We must still become be aware. We must still beware of wantonly disclosing this flaw to others who do not share that love. The same is true of the Torah, in as much as overly literal or contextless quotations of scripture or dicta of the rabbinic masters, for that matter, can sometimes have an injurious impact on the outside on the view outsiders have of Judaism. Eleazar, whose lifespan was marked, after all, by dangerous relations between Judea and the Roman Empire, as well as the ascendancy of Christianity, warns us in dire terms of the harm to the reputation of Judaism and to Jews that can be done even by insiders. To informally paraphrase Rama Gamliel's assessments of Rabbi Elazar, we really need to follow this fellow from Modi'in. And indeed, we still need these two teachings and others of his as well to this day. All right. Anything jump out of you? Anything you want to? Okay.
Well, for Earl, you can go back and it's like part of the earlier comment. It's almost like the discussion of Shem Tov and Lashon Hara. It's like murdering somebody. They equate it to murdering somebody.
Yeah.
When you say something and you defame someone's character, you can't take it back, and just you can't go out once it's out on the internet. You can delete it, but it's not gone. It's there forever. So that's the same type of idea.
So it's interesting because this is kind of an addendum to that mission of the Kibbutz Shem Tov, that the crown of the good reputation. You have the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood. The crown of the good reputation surpasses them all. You can have the Torah, you can have the crown of good deeds, but if you're kind of putting this negativity out there about people in the world, then that first crown doesn't matter as much, and it tarnishes it. And it also, I think tells us like everyone's human, and people have these, as Rabbi Tucker kind of mentions about the different people out there. Sometimes make it.
Well, and just another one along these lines. Think about the certain sects that are going and having meetings with the Iranians and refusing to accept Israel, and think about the damage that they do with what they're saying. I mean, they make people question who Israel is, what Israel is, and here they are, they're meeting with the Iranian Ayatollahs saying, we're on your side. And they're Jews.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. So we're going to end with Rabbi Tamara Led Applebaum's commentary to the other side. But who exactly is included in the category of the human spirit mentioned above at 3:13? So she goes back to when the popular spirit is pleased with someone, the divine spirit is also pleased with that person. When the popular spirit is displeased with somebody, the divine spirit is also displeased with that person. A Jew cannot fill up this world with meaning. A Jew cannot fill up this world with meaning, cannot possibly do anything to bring the world to come closer, cannot work to make the world this world into a better place if one remains satisfied just with Torah and good deeds. Those are obviously important pursuits, but they're not enough. Rabbi Elazar Modin lists 5 categories of people who have no portion of the world to come. And these 5 fields symbolizes the paths that sustain Jewish covenantal society. To profane sacrificial meat symbolizes detachment from the circle of life. To scorn the festival symbolizes detachment from the annual cycle of worship. To cause others to blanch in public symbolizes detachment from shared communal ethical standards. In all, the covenant of our father Abraham, that is circumcision, symbolizes detachment from the uniqueness present in the Jewish male body. To interpret facets of the Torah contrary to the halakha symbolizes detachment from the language of Torah, the values embedded in the language of revelation.
Wow.
A person cannot imbue one's life with meaningful content without adopting these 5 covenantal strands, which band together all members of the Jewish people. Indeed, for Rabbi Elazar, the popular spirit Briot, spoken of by a vote, extends primarily to those who are members of the same covenantal community. That is, the Jewish nation. If the sum total of one's Jewishness is expressed only in personal Torah study and in general acts of kindness to others, will not be enough. A person cannot act in every right, but must instead focus on the environment specific to one's connection and relationship. That forms the core of the world which one lives, and it is in that environment that a person experiences. Rabbi Elazar's point may appear distant from our world, but we are born to it. We should, however, listen to his words, especially in our own era when many dream of breaking down all barriers to the global village. To such people, Rabbi Elazar sends out his thoughts and says, real human connectedness can be most fully actualized only in the context of community. It can never find its fullest expression in the world at large more generally. It needs a language, a home, a people, a land, a society, a framework. Do not destroy the framework in the name of humanity. Even humanity needs a framework in which to realize itself. A universal life of meaning will flourish for the human community only if it trains all its children in all of their own native tongues and cultures to live in such a manner that their fellow creatures will be pleased with them. Then each culture will be able to see the face of others. Each people will see in the faces of the brothers of its brothers and sisters until the entire world finds meaning. So, it's interesting thinking about Zoom and can't we do a Zoom with the whole world, right? Can't we just stand on Zoom? And we can't, right? We need smaller communities. We need to be able to speak our languages. But we also need to respect one another and speak in that way. So very interesting commentaries today. I want to thank you all for being here today and hope to see you back next week. I'm just going to end this recording.